My name is Noelani Osegawara, and I'm a demonstration teacher at the UCLA Lab School. I teach at the primary level, and my students are between the ages of 6 and 8 years old. My classroom is a multi-age class that I teach for a period, my students for a period of 2 years. So we have a 2-year curriculum. I'm also an EcoRise teacher ambassador. EcoRise is a nonprofit environmental education group that provides and supports teachers with a flexible curriculum focusing on environmental sustainability and justice. So most students spend a lot of hours learning inside the classroom setting, but it's important to recognize that our outdoor environment is another educational setting. When students have the opportunity to not only play and learn outdoors, they naturally start to make observations about the world around them. As the teacher, understanding the curricular needs of our students and how we can integrate their observations and questions into their learning creates an intrinsic excitement for learning within the child. As part of this process, especially when considering the integration of climate change and the social impact of our students, it's important to build vocabulary for sustainability into their language and identity. As we discuss our individual impact on the environment, we also discuss what it is to have empathy for others in our immediate community, but also across the world. This leads to an understanding of what social and environmental justice is and what it means for our environment to be sustainable. So these are 3 words that I talk about a lot in my class when we discuss climate change. When we listen to what children are curious about, document their observations and questions, the identity as a researcher starts to form within them. At UCLA, we are so blessed to have a natural learning environment that includes a redwood forest and a creek where our students can explore and learn. In different years, this creek has brought up so many opportunities for learning in different ways. One example was the foaming of our creek water after an unusually heavy rainfall caused by atmospheric rivers. Research and understanding on our knowledge, on our natural watershed, the students started to ask questions about what this foam was. So some thought it was somebody poured soap in the water. Some actually, I know it's really hard to see what I wrote, but some actually thought it was a result of pollution. And so they were asking so many questions because there was so much foam in the water. And so that led us to learn more about our watershed in the community, its relation to our creek, and they wanted to know, well, where does our water go to? We learned that it goes to Bayona Creek in the Marina del Rey, and then largely our ocean waters. So they started to think of their impact on the larger world community because they saw so much pollution in our creek. And then learned later on that actually this foam was not very healthy. It was like made of proteins that were caused probably by feces. That was like from the sewage systems because the rainfall had like just been so large. But that's not what I'm talking about today. Most recently, my students started to ask questions and made observations about animals and insects that led to the research on the interdependence of living and non-living things and the importance of pollinators in our and so when our students were observing our creek ecosystem, they collected data on the number of consumers they found living in our ecosystem. They noticed a lack of pollinators such as butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds, and saw this as a problem. As their teacher, I started to integrate read alouds on the importance of pollinators to our global food supply. We went on field trips and engaged with experts from UCLA, like our UCLA beekeepers, in our inquiry unit of study to build more background knowledge about why pollinators are so valuable to our ecosystem and what we would need to help them thrive. The students also formed small groups as researchers to learn more deeply about different pollinators around the world in different habitats and ecosystems. But in the case referring back to our creek ecosystems, the students learned that we didn't have the plants in our environment native to our community. They had observed a lot of beautiful landscape of plants and flowers, but these were not the native plants that would attract native pollinators to our environment. So as a teacher ambassador with EcoRise, my students were able to take their research a step further. So EcoRise offers something called a student innovation grant, where students apply for and write grants themselves to address an environmental challenge they find in their community. The Student Innovation Grant funds the solution to this challenge, where the students must provide data and documentation that addresses the challenge and budgets the financial cost to the solution they find and the positive impact it will have on the environmental community as young change makers. I love this grant writing opportunity for the students. The teachers cannot write the grant. It has to come completely from the students. It integrates science, literacy, as they have to write a convincing statement for the need for their solution to be funded, math to share their data and measurements, and they have to develop a budget for their funding, and most importantly, a sense of empowerment and importance as someone who can and will make a difference in their immediate and global community. And the part they loved most was the opportunity to share their research with the public. So after they were granted the money, which was like $758.42, and they got the check exactly for that amount. They purchased the native plants. We all shared in the planting of the native plants in our piazza at the UCLA Lab School, and it took some time, but they started to see more pollinators coming to our the gardens, and they were so excited to share the whole process. This is the slides that they created. I had a small group who wanted to, like, of 8 kids who worked together to be the presenters to some board members from EcoRise, but also some experts from UCLA who sat in on their presentation and asked them thoughtful questions, and and they got and provided feedback. And so this experience, which many of you before me shared, is so important to them as 6 to 8-year-olds, because they really felt so important to this research project. They felt empowered that they got the money themselves. They planted the gardens. They started to share about what native plants they needed for their own home gardens, and they were sharing them with their neighbors. And it's led to other projects that we've done at the school. Last year, we also did one around waste at our school, and they've been really and understanding the importance of composting to decrease the amount of methane that's released into the environment from landfills. And so it's all just been really exciting work to do with my young ones, and hopefully inspiring them as they get older to be more active in climate change. Thank you.